John is sorting the mic out, we'll be calling Sue Milton, who gave us a very good information and talk on informed use of AI in auditing. So she'll be here. And then Alan will also be here. He just gave us a very insightful topic on AI in the spotlight. So he'll be here. And John will join us again when he comes. So this session is just to at least do an interactive one-to-one discussion and give an overview of everything that has been shared so that we can all learn something from it. So without much ado, I will, okay, John is coming.
John did the Duffer's Guide. It was brilliant. A Duffer's Guide to Risk.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, John.
John,
thank you so much.
Is AI a duffer?
No, we're dumbest for using it.
Yeah. So as I said earlier, this is interactive session where we will be having a panel discussion of everything we've discussed so far. And I'll be handing over the mic to the audience. But before I do that, I want to maybe bring out a thought-provoking question based on what we've discussed earlier, and then based on what our distinguished speakers spoke about. I'll quote what Sue said when she was having her discussion. She said, AI is our apprentice. Ooh. And also is mentally challenged. And then went ahead to say AI is, stupid because it follows information. And then Alan too, when he was speaking, Alan Bodman just now, he just said AI is very, very good tools if you use it appropriately. And he gave a use case of it being used for report writing specifically and said how this has been beneficial to some companies. So I want to find out, how do we merge the two? Because on the other hand, we say it's our apprentice, and the other two, it's more or less very, very efficient in making us efficient in what we are doing. So I want to ask you if maybe you can give us more information why you said that, because there are other techniques that have evolved, such as RAG, and there is also, as you said, agentic AI, which we are moving towards to. So how do we merge the two, maybe opinions, and see the way forward, how we are going to use this AI tools? So I'll give you the mic before I give Jack. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I say AI is an apprentice because when we get keen young people in, they're very fast and quite often eager to learn. They will, be very enthusiastic, but they don't have the experience to make the judgments that are perhaps needed of the organization, not in those first few years. The big asset that AI brings us is speed. And it's untiring. It will work 24/7 without complaint. So if you've got something that I mentioned in another slide, is quite linear and process driven, and around that are certain habits and behaviors that are typical for each stage of the process and the links between those processes, then something like report writing is absolutely brilliant, because you've got your audit scope through to the tasks you undertook, the evidence, the findings, the recommendations. It can pick all of those up and do it in an instance. Oh my gosh, that is so useful. But it's an apprentice. So make sure you check it, that it's evaluated the control, if you like, weaknesses appropriately. It's interpreted what we've said in our documentation that it's reading, what's been going on. And if AI itself has done all that as well, so it's done a lot of the work, we do have to check, because it's marking its own homework, it's reporting on what it's found without any human intervention, and we need that still.
Absolutely agree, Sue. And I mean, you said human intervention there right at the end. You're going to be very uncomfortable if there's no human being involved in that process. So I quite like the analogy of the apprentice, because it means that it's giving you some stuff, but you still need to have a look at it and make sure it makes sense and it stacks up. So you don't want to lose that kind of human involvement. And I guess it's when we get to the stage when, you know, AI is making decisions, which then drive further decisions and drive further stuff, that gets quite worrying. But for the moment, it feels to me that we've still got that opportunity to intervene, to basically check, sense check that what we're getting back is, you know, stacks up. Equal. The other thing for me is, and we talk about explainability, you know, you need to be able to, it needs to make sense, I guess. You need to understand that what you're getting back is actually explainable. Giving you what you expect, because you may get back more than you expect, but you still need to look at it. You still need to do that human review.
Thank you very much. We got someone here. Okay.
Hi, I've got a question for Alan about what you mentioned about the firm that giving the sort of ask the business areas to go and see where they could apply AI in their business area. Do you see any drawbacks on that approach when it comes to those business areas being slightly biased in terms of they might have to learn that new skill, as you mentioned, and that's something that they can't really overcome if they're the ones in charge of their AI adoption?
I didn't delve too much into how the various departments kind of approached that, adopted that, but it was a financial services organization. So, my understanding was that they were very well supported in doing their research. And I mean, I guess some areas are probably more open to, you know, introducing AI into their processes than maybe some other areas would be. But yeah, I mean, for me, it would be, and at the end of the day, they still had to put together a robust business model to justify why they wanted to go down a particular route. So it wasn't just, you know, come back and tell us you want to use AI, we'll give you the money to go and do it. They still had to have a proper business case, you know, demonstrating it's going to be a payback, it's going to be value added, etc. So I mean, I think it depends on the type of business as well. But yeah, I mean, I'm not suggesting everybody goes and does that, but for me, that was quite a novel way of doing it. It's not quite forcing it, but encouraging it and supporting it and making sure people kind of think through and are, you know, receptive to innovation and transformation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone? Okay. All right.
Hi. Whilst I was listening to what everyone was saying, I was having a discussion with my manager before I came to this seminar, and one of the things I said is, and I'm alluding to something that you said about going to the different departments and finding out where they can best leverage AI to improve their productivity. And she said to me, if you're a business analyst, surely it should be the other way around. Instead of getting the technology to shape the problem, you should be looking at the problem and then finding out what tools are out there that can fulfill that problem. So, you know, what is your problem? What's your exam question?
You called me out.
You know, because, yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, I just want to know what your thoughts are on that.
I go along with that, but yeah, sorry, I do go along with that. That's a really good point you make there. It shouldn't be the technology driving the business decision. It should be the business coming up with the business case, I guess. But I think in the example that I quoted, because they were going through a huge transformation program, it was a good opportunity to basically say to the business, you know, we need to look at how we can adopt AI and improve our business processes. But I totally agree with you. It should be the other way around, ideally. But this is part of a larger transformation. However, having said that, I mean, I would encourage people to basically challenge their businesses that are maybe laggards or dinosaurs that are saying, oh, it doesn't apply to us. It's like, how do you know? Have you done the analysis? Do you know what other organizations are doing in this space? And, you know, we're not talking about the big financial services that are way ahead on this stuff. I've been doing this for ages. But there are, you know, the SME, the smaller companies. I mean, there are lots of companies that could really benefit from embracing and start using, even if it's just the productivity tool side of it, not necessarily embedding it into their business processes, but, you know, just getting people to be a bit more open to using tools that are readily available and being used by other organizations.
Money. Found his location at last.
My name is Liberty. I've asked this question before, but probably wasn't dealt with. As
Sorry.
so someone mentioned risk assessment, maybe developing AI-powered risk. I'm actually working on a project of conducting research around AI-powered models for energy sector, industrial IoTs for energy sector that would incorporate regulatory compliance, the algorithm.
You don't know either the names.
So my question is, I've done some research, conducted a literature review, also using AI, of course, and in the principle of human in the loop, what would be your experience, or what would you say? Would it be a lucrative aspect or domain to invest in, both in terms of research and otherwise in the UK context? Would it make sense to back on that kind of journey?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I mentioned very quickly that you can get focused ID AI just to do a particular task. One of my examples was risk assessment. We didn't dwell on it. Now, as a skill, of how to get the human to work well with AI and AI work well with the human, we need the human in the loop. And I think I did mention in my talk, of the skills that we need, that is one of the skills I see arising. Yeah? If we don't want to lose skills, knowledge and experience, innovation, we need to know how best to work with AI. It must not dominate. It is our partner within which we must work hand in hand. And you can keep that in mind. And as AI develops, we can't lag behind. We have to develop as well about how we best use it and how we train it. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and Liberty, that's a really great question. And I really don't have anything to add to what it's the human side. Does that answer your question?
I think she has a mic.
So for a company who's just getting started in using AI, what would you say are the steps to clearly define AI strategy or roadmap? So AI strategy across the company.
Yeah. So, you know, again, we need to go back to basics. It's not, yes, it's a new technology, but we need to just use our, you know, the steps we do whenever we go through a new business process or implementation of a new, I mean, I refer to it as just another system. Of course, it's not just another system, but you know, for me, it's not rocket science. We need to stick to the you know, what are the steps we'd normally go through in terms of, you know, looking at the governance, looking at the business case, understanding how it supports our business objectives, and then, you know, moving into, you know, how do we go about selecting our tools, and how do we go about implementing them and testing them, etc. So that life cycle of implementing, say, another system, you know, we shouldn't lose sight of that. Yes, there are some specific things we need to look at from a kind of AI perspective. And for me, the key thing is around, how do we use it? What are the policies around it? How do we make sure we're using it safely and securely and responsibly and ethically? Whether it's using it as a tool or rolling it out as part of our kind of product set of our systems. So, I mean, I don't want to kind of play that down, but for me, don't lose sight of, we've been through this before. We need to use the same logic for deploying new technologies, new systems, moving to the cloud, for example. What did we do when we moved to the cloud? What was our strategy? What was our roadmap? How did we go about defining that? Whether we're in risk or audit or security, what role did we play in that? So, use those well tried and tested methodologies and structures.
Sometimes you just need to do something. I'll give an example. Before the first weather satellites went up, a lot of the meteorologists were arguing, why do we need satellites? We measure air pressure, temperature, we can predict what the weather is going to be. Then they put up a weather satellite, and immediately they said, what a great thing this is. We see the cloud formations, we see where it's going to rain, we see the wind direction of the clouds, and suddenly everyone wants to use the meteorological satellites. Yeah. So that's what, instead of having a roadmap as such, you should actually get one of the departments to actually use it and do something with it.
Can I just add to that very quickly? So just a thought that came up. Why don't you pose that question to ChatGPT? Explain your business, explain what you're trying to do. You're looking at a strategy, you're looking at the roadmap, and have that open the conversation and have an ongoing conversation with that. That's really powerful. I mean, I try to answer it, but I can never be as good as, say, AI to answer that.
Sue, did you want to say that?
I would just say generally in that question, I would suggest we can step back a bit and ask what is the reason why we want to investigate AI. That's not to say no. So agree with all these two. But I've come across where there's been a gallop towards AI because there's a fear of missing out. If I don't do it, my competitors will get a competitive edge. And for boardroom where I work, that is very, very important. So it's back to say, what's the problem I'm trying to solve? And why do I think AI could be the solution? And that opens a discussion internally, which is also very useful. But the normal approach, old approaches always works.
Sorry, not to harbor the point, and I said that a little bit in jest, but I'll give you an example. I was having a lunch with a longtime friend of mine in Cape Town in February, and he said, I was telling him I was doing the AI stuff, and he said, can you help me? I run this business, and I know about this. He runs a online training business for very niche kind of areas for safety in lifts and that, all around the world. He has customers, east and west, everywhere, Africa, Far East, and South America. And he says, I'm very worried that AI is going to take over my. I'm not going to have a business model in a year's time. And I said to him, I agree with you, because this is something that's open for the taking. You're going to have AI coming in. And he said, what do I do? I said, look, I don't know your business that well enough, but why don't you explain this to ChatGPT and just start having a conversation? And guess what? He had, over a period of several weeks, he just kind of built this out and built out. And he's now come up with a strategy to actually, fully deploy AI in his business, whereas before he wasn't touching it. So don't forget the power of using Gen AI to help you answer the question.
Thank you. Another question from him. So,
thank you. Yeah, so a lot of companies, like maybe the one you were mentioning just now, are starting to implement generative AI for the first time. A lot of them will have maybe 3 lines of defense model. Someone would put it in, someone would have put in lots of controls and checked it. For auditing such a company, what do you think would be the most likely things to go wrong in practice? So not so much the theoretical risks that we sometimes hear of, but in practice, what would be the most likely things that would go wrong? And what would you want to look for? And how do you test for those in an audit?
I would say you have posed us a very difficult question because I don't think we know the answer yet. Right, with AI, If it comes up with absolute nonsense, we get it. We can spot it and we can kind of do something with it. So there's a control failure about how we use the AI, and then we can backtrack to see whether it's the prompt in the first place, or was it the data, or was it human interpretation in the end, the judgment was wrong. Where it's right, that's great. My problem is when it's that little bit wrong, we're not going to know it. So we might make a judgment of something that looks right, but it isn't. I haven't worked out what we do with that yet, other than asking a human being to go through the same process. I think that's all I've got to say on this.
I mean, for me, sorry, what's your name again?
Phil.
Phil, for me, Phil, it would be to look at what's going wrong. I mean, are you familiar with the Canadian airline that recently it's AI, Gen AI, basically pointed people to be able to book really cheap flights, and it was an error, but they've had to honor that, and it's cost them millions basically. So have a look at some of the things that have gone wrong and understand whether that's something that maybe could apply to your organization. And you know, it's the old thing about there's been a massive security incident. How do we know it can't happen in our organization? But also, you know, being very clear, you're dealing with high-risk systems or decision-making systems, and reflect back on the the NIST stuff and the ISO 2042001. You know, are you at least covering those areas that are kind of essential? But for me, I would be looking at, there's lots of examples of things that have gone very, very wrong. But the other big thing for me would be things like, how do you test for bias? Are you ever going to be able to completely get rid of any bias in your system? Amazon, Microsoft, faces on that. Happen to them. So you need to work out how do you test for that. How do you
There's one more.
I think that answers your question. What do you think?
I would say there's lots of different things that can go wrong, right? There's data, there's cyber, there's third-party risks, there's model risks, there's IT implementation risks. And the question is, I suppose, you know, where do you start? And you may not have time to look at all of them. You've got your ISO 42001, you've got your list of risks on Watson. What's most likely to go wrong? Possibly hallucinations, possibly data leakage, possibly prompt manipulations, as we were showing before.
It is a bit of a depends question. Depends what type of AI you're rolling out. Again, my starting point would always be governance. You know, if you're doing an audit for the first time, you have to look at governance as starting point. I don't know if anybody disagrees with me on that, but that would certainly be.
There's one person here who wants to ask a question too. So if you have the mic here.
Oh yeah. My name's Alan. I've got
good name.
No, mine's spelled.
Bias.
I've got a statement to follow. I've got a question, but I've got a statement as well. Is we talk about this kind of AI dumbing people down. I'm a bit worried about this in this divisive world that we kind of, that sounds elitist to me at times. But I do think if you look at it from an audit point of view, what you've got to worry about is that we all, when we started in audit, learned those kind of core skills. And we learned about going into a meeting and being able to see people's responses and kind of see things of what they were saying and kind of learn how you went through the process. And I think if you're not careful with AI, you will lose those core underlying values of what we all learned, and you'll just rely on AI and you'll miss a lot. And like you'll write a report and you'll miss a lot. So that's my statement about what you could potentially lose using AI. My question is, we all talk about ethical AI. You've said it a lot. What do you actually mean by that? Like, what are we talking about when we say ethical AI?
So Alan, first of all, I just want to comment on your comment, which is very real. The person I spoke to in the Far East, one of the downsides, which he's seen in his team, was they use AI, Gen AI, for doing research on, if they haven't, say, audited a particular area before. So they do a lot of research on this. And he said, an example where the audit team had put together an audit program and audit steps and everything using Gen AI, but didn't actually really understand the real stuff in the weeds. And it was very evident when they came to audit that, they were auditing against a program that had been crafted by Gen AI. So they lost that, potentially lost some of those, core skills in normally you would do the research and really learn about some particular topic. So that is very, very real, and you need to manage that and deal with that. So ethics, are you doing the right thing? Is it something that's going to stack up and be, I guess, show that you're caring, responsible, fair, all those good things. And I guess it ties in with the culture as well. So, yeah, and you don't have bias and there's full transparency. I mean, it's a whole host of things.
Sounds quite fluffy, though.
It does sound a bit fluffy, doesn't it?
Kind of like David Mitchell turned round once when they were having all these tax issues, and he said, "We have a stupid tax code in this country where you pay tax based on your morals."
Yeah.
And we're kind of, when you talk about ethical AI, you're kind of in the same ball game. You're kind of saying if you're moralistic and you're a moralist, you'll use it correctly. But the reality is there's lots of people out there who will gain an advantage by not having any.
I mean, there's always the commercial aspect, and you could argue if people are just trying to make money out of it, is that necessarily ethical? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I was going to raise that. Ethics, morals, they are ephemeral. You can't grab them. They're intangible. We kind of all know that we believe in this room collectively we would be able to judge something that is ethical and unethical. Go to a different culture, be completely different potentially. So when it comes to what is the purpose of what this piece of AI is doing, is it to make us money? Then you might be doing the right thing, but because somewhere along the line you're discriminating a whole load of people for whatever reason, maybe financially they can't afford the product, or it's whatever reason. Well, it's a moral dilemma, and other people will call out whether they believe it's wrong. And I don't want to bring politics into it, but the whole Israeli Hamas thing is one massive moral dilemma. If you model that in AI, what we'd be expecting of it, I don't know. So there we are. I think practically you have to check and clean your data as much as you can, which is difficult if you're using Gen AI because you don't know where half the data is coming from. And you need to make sure that the algorithms and the code that support the usage of the data are functionally doing what you believe the business needs. And I think the main component is be able to allow people to challenge it. Your customers must be able to challenge it. So redress is really important, and that's the piece that we're not talking enough about. It's bad enough to fight against the computer says no anyway. With AI, it's going to be much more difficult. So we've got to build that in. And I would see that as the ethical component that I want to see there as part of that conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, we started 5 minutes late. So now we have 5 more minutes, and I think it's more 3 minutes more. So we will allow 1 or 2 questions before we come to a close. So, yeah.
Close related, though not exactly the same, of course, is trustworthy AI. A phrase which I've not heard at all today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, in the IT land, there's a lot of discussion around digital trust. So, how do you establish that relationship? How can you trust trusting your data with, etc. So yeah, I mean, trustworthy, and maybe it should have been on the slide, maybe quite high up in the top there. But you're absolutely right. It's really important to ensure that relationship between stakeholders, customers is supported by trustworthy AI.
Flexible answer is you can't, which is why you need a human in the loop.
Trustworthy AI actually means something.
John.
Trustworthy AI refers to things like transparency, accountability, all of those sorts of things. So if I was using a system, be it big bank, small bank, whatever provider, then trustworthy AI would be they've made the effort to put those things in place.
I say we all.
I think part of the problem, or part of the challenge, is that we've come through the cycle of the last 20 years of social media. Tech companies demonstrating that ethics and trustworthiness isn't necessarily always top of their. And looking back, it's easy to kind of with hindsight. And yes, we're probably making the same mistakes in the adoption of AI, because ultimately there's a commercial driver behind it. So that's this worrying thing for me. Is we've made mistakes in the past, certainly with social media. I mean, there's a lot of things that have gone very, very wrong because of unethical behavior by big tech and untrustworthy breakdown.
So it's part of the governance that you mentioned earlier on.
Yeah.
The auditors that might be using this to have that in your.
Yeah. I mean, the other dilemma for me is that the other dilemma for me is because we've got the EU Act in Europe, are organizations that are maybe less ethical or less trustworthy, are they going to just avoid setting up businesses in elsewhere? That's always a kind of
There's time for one more question, so that, yeah.
How long do you think it will be before the next AI winter?
Winter?
Nuclear winter.
There wasn't any winter between 2 days.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, where it all went quiet and there was no development, having moved on. I think when we're saturated, so I don't think there'll be a winter, but I can see there was a point where it would plateau off. And that might be because the legislation is restricting it. Maybe we're finding it actually very brilliant, so we don't need to have any more innovation. I suppose it's a bit like Maslow's hierarchy of whatever it is, desires and wishes. We might well plateau off, and then things will happen in the world again, and it will pick up or die because it will be replaced by something else.
I'm going to be a bit provocative and say I don't agree. I think it's going to go through the roof. I mean, I think we're going to look back in 2 years' time. We're going to be doing stuff we never thought about, and not 5 years' time, 18 months, 2 years' time. Back when we could do stuff on AI, and come back. But
Oh, I agree with that. It will definitely escalate for the time to come, but at some point, I think it will plateau off.
Okay.
Time to finish.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was very insightful discussion.